So imagine this, you're on eBay searching the used electronic drum market because you want to save a few bucks and still get a quality brand. And you've come across some older flagships from Roland and Yamaha from like a decade or two ago. Are they still worth buying? They're kind of at iffy prices right now. My thoughts on that are coming up. What's up guys, Justin Greenwald here, welcome to 65 Drums. This is the place to keep on top of all things e-drum related, so consider subscribing if you haven't yet. So today I'm talking about flagships from Roland and Yamaha. I would talk about Alesis flagships, but they've only got one, the Alesis Strike. There are 6 drum sets I'm going to mention today, the TD-10, 20, 30, and the DTXTREME 1, 2, and 3. The first thing to remember is that these people are very attached to that drum set. They remember the day vividly. Back in 2003, August 3rd, when they went and they bought that drum set, they remember every dime they've spent on every drum pedal, every pair of drumsticks, every single clamp, and every single extra pad and wrap that they're adding on because they tell you about it in the description. It's an incredible amount of money. This is their baby. This is their motorcycle. This is their house that they saved up for. And they are very passionate about this drum set. They really try to convince you that it's worth all this money. Let's say someone bought a Roland TD-10 and they paid, I don't know, let's say they paid 4,000 bucks for it back in the day. They take half the price off, they're selling it for $2,000, and they act like that's some sort of a deal.
50% off. Barely used. We only played it for 5 minutes once a decade ago, and it's in a smoke-free home.
But here's the thing, electronic drum sets are pieces of technology. Imagine someone trying to sell a used iPhone 3. And they're gonna give you 50% off what it originally cost. Maybe it was 700 bucks, now they're trying to sell you it for 300 bucks. Would you buy that iPhone 3 for 300 bucks, even though it's half off? No, because the old price doesn't matter anymore. MSRP doesn't matter, none of that matters. If you buy it from someone who's desperate for cash, maybe he got a divorce or something crazy, then you'll get a great deal. But if you're trying to buy this drum set from a guy that doesn't need the money, he'll have an outrageous price for this drum set and he'll continually list it on eBay for 6 months straight trying to get that extra 2,000 bucks out of that drum set. Okay, let's go into those 6 different flagships I was talking about earlier. Let's start off with the Roland TD-10. So I did some digging into the archives of eBay and stuff to see what these drum sets have sold for, because not all 6 of these drum sets are currently being listed right now. The cheapest price I found was around 2,000 bucks for a Roland TD-10 used. I think that's incredibly overpriced. If you've played a Roland TD-10 recently, it hasn't aged well, the sounds. So remember, these drum sets came out originally in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So they have some years on them. And the sounds were incredible for back in the day. I remember as a kid watching this VHS tape infomercial for Roland drum sets over and over and over again. And man, it blew my mind how good it sounded and all the things they were doing with this drum module. I actually ended up playing it at a Sam Ash and I was like, this isn't as cool as I was picturing it. Unless you found an incredible deal on this drum set, I wouldn't really recommend buying it. But again, I don't think you'll find a deal like that. The people that bought these drum sets are way too attached to them. They're still remembering when they bought them originally for $4,000 or whatever it was. The next drum set on the list is the Roland TD-20. Now we're getting into better territory. Again, this is selling for about $2,000. That's the best deal I found on it. And for $2,000, I can kind of see that. Like, it's not an incredible deal, but if someone said, hey, I bought this used Roland TD-20 flagship drum set from a few years ago, and I bought it for $2,000, I mean, I can kind of see it. Because if you look at the current competition, your real competition is a Roland TD-25K, tiny little pads, better sounds than the TD-20. And then if you compare it to like the Alesis Strike, the base model, you get an extra floor tom and an extra crash cymbal with this TD-20. And the trigger accuracy is better as well. Okay, so let's go to the TD-30. I'm a little biased on this because I have a TD-30K version. And right now they're going anywhere from 5,000 up to 7,000. I'm a little iffy on this one. I feel like 5,000 bucks, and that's about the lowest I found. 5,000 bucks, I don't really think it's worth it. I've played this drum set a couple of different times, and it's a great drum set. The pads are large, and it's fun to play. The drum module is still solid, even though it's a generation behind the TD-50. We just need to wait around a little bit. When the TD-50 starts hitting eBay used, when TD-50 owners start selling them on eBay eventually, maybe that'll happen later this year or next year. We'll start seeing those possibly. that will drive down the prices of used Roland TD-30 drum sets. Okay, so let's jump back a few years and talk about the Yamaha DTX Extreme. For the longest time, I didn't know Yamaha actually made this drum set until I finally stumbled across it. I was doing research for my History of Electronic Drums video, and I was digging up all kinds of drum sets that I didn't know existed, and this was one of them. It actually used acoustic drum heads, and the sounds have actually aged pretty well. The technology they stuffed inside of this drum set was pretty darn impressive. But again, it's using acoustic drum heads, which means it's pretty loud, and the drum set is pretty old. It's somewhere around as old as the Roland TD-10. But it's selling at, actually, I didn't find a price because it's so old and so obscure, it hardly ever touches eBay. This drum set is very rare. I don't know the price I would recommend someone buying this drum set at. Let's move on to the next one, the DTX Extreme II. This drum set has a lot of hardcore fans. I remember going through all the forums for the DTX Extreme II and the DTX Extreme III. I was hunting for information for my pad compatibility video. I was trying to figure out if Roland mesh pads would work with the DTX Extreme drum modules. And while I was doing that, I learned there is a lot of hardcore fans. This drum module is really powerful from the information I've learned on it. I've never actually played this drum set, but the sounds have held up decently well, and it's selling at a pretty insane price. I've found it for $1,000 on Reverb. At $1,000, this drum set is definitely worth picking up. Now the sounds are a little dated. I personally wouldn't buy it, but you're getting very large drum pads, and that's probably why you're buying the Flagship in the first place. Run that into your laptop using EasyDrummer and you've got a nice system. All right, let's move on to the last one, the DTX Extreme III. I've found this thing as low as $1,500. I feel like that's a decent price for this drum set. The sounds, they're not incredible or anything, but they're okay. You got very large drum pads, and the drum module has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. I don't have time to go into everything this drum module could do, but it's a pretty powerful drum module, especially for the time. It was going hard head-to-head against the Roland TD-20, but for $1,500, I feel like this is a solid deal for this drum set if you want very large pads and you want to use it with a piece of drum software. If you think all of this is ridiculous, and you're like, Justin, why would anyone buy any of those drum sets? It's because people want to buy a large drum set for less than $7,000, and that's why people buy older flagship drum sets. They're going for those large drum shells. But this entire system of people selling a used electronic drum set that's 10 years old for $4,000, that whole thing is gonna start to crumble now because the Alesis Strike and Strike Pro happened. That has thrown a monkey wrench in this entire system. If you think about it, if I'm shopping for an electronic drum set right now and I want a large drum set, I can either buy, a TD-20 for $2,000 and it's got slightly older sounds, or I can buy a brand new Alesis Strike for $2,200. Not only are they priced exactly the same, the Alesis Strike has a bigger snare drum, it's got an extra crash cymbal, and it's got an extra tom as well. And it's using a newer drum module. You can argue which drum module sounds better. So the Alesis Strike is throwing a monkey wrench in this whole business of selling your used decade-old drum set for thousands upon thousands of dollars. I feel like prices might start to change a little bit or shift a little bit. We'll have to see. We don't know the long-term effects yet. It's not perfect. They're still struggling with a few issues, getting them ironed out. But at the same time, it's a new drum set versus who knows where this drum set has been and it's 20 years old. You see what I mean? So this whole conversation is shifting and changing, and that's why you gotta think hard about buying an older flagship, especially if the person selling it is trying to rope you in to a $4,000 deal. But as far as older flagships go, buy it if you just want larger drum pads and you're gonna use a piece of drum software. If you're gonna rely on drum module sounds like I do, maybe go with something a little bit newer. I hope I didn't offend too many people in this video. Obviously, there are guys watching that have a TD-10 and they love it, or they have a DTX Extreme II and they love it. I'm not trying to pick on anyone's drum sets or what people think is a good drum module versus a bad drum module. These are just my opinions, my thoughts on whether or not a flagship is worth buying. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm interested to find out. See you guys down there, and thank you for watching.